Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. In this video, we're going to look at a new spreadsheet that I put together, which is a collection and a timeline of LDS specific miracles and interesting happenings. I'm actually surprised I haven't done it before now, but now I have it and I feel like it's pretty eye-opening. We've pretty much covered everything on it, but when you compile just this information, just this data, um, it really sheds light on things and kind of gives you a new context through which you can view the time that we're living in right now. So it kind of started with this comment from Giant Universe. They say in April 2019 General Conference, President Nelson said that time is running out. Maybe that was a 5-year warning, just like Samuel the Lamanite's 5-year warning in the Book of Mormon times. 5 years from April 2019 is April 2024 when the eclipse happens. Also, it's April 6th, a Saturday, which is a Sabbath in Israel, and it's General Conference. So we've talked a lot about this talk where President Nelson says time is running out, right? You can find that in his talk called Come Follow Me, April 2019 General Conference. And that's always stuck out to me, and I know it has to a lot of you too. Nothing like that has ever been said in General Conference. Believe me, I've searched. And he was serious. Just looking at his body language, his tone of voice, his pause before he says that, he's serious. We were recently talking about Samuel the Lamanite as we were looking at this tracker, this phrase tracker that I have. I had to correct 2021. Before I had 3 right here, but it was actually just 1. So I hit the wrong button. But anyway, it doesn't change the fact that Samuel the Lamanite has been talked about a lot more frequently since 2010. When you compare this to previous times, it's a lot more frequent. Here's kind of a solid block right here between 84 and 88. And then kind of from 59 to 64. But you can see that it's just not really that frequent that this term, Samuel the Lamanite, comes up in General Conference talks. So it's been brought up a lot since 2010 compared to previous decades. We also talked about Samuel the Lamanite when we were talking about Elder Bednar's talk in the 2015 Christmas devotional, where he had everybody do a thought experiment. Imagine that you're, I can't remember what he said, like 5 years old or 10 years old. 5 years go pass since you see Samuel the Lamanite give his prophetic warning. And when he told the people what to expect, what signs to look for at the coming of Christ the first time. And so there was that 5-year warning. Okay. So Elder Bednar and then Samuel the Lamanite being brought up more frequently in recent years. It's interesting. So that's why he commented on this. Now, looking at the Come Follow Me talk of 2019, as you'll remember, this was the General Conference right after the Paradise, California fire. And President Nelson talked about this fire. He showed a picture of it so all of us could picture what a burnt down city looked like, because we know that, well, I'm assuming, but hopefully this would invoke thoughts of what the second coming is going to be like, because we know that one of the primary features of the second coming is the earth being cleansed with fire. So I feel like it's a warning. I feel like this is a warning, and then just a flat out warning at the end. Time is running out. Okay. So it very well could be. Really quick, while I'm thinking about it, let's see. Maui death toll. I haven't checked this today yet. CNN 4 hours ago, at least 99 people were killed. So now it's gone up to 99. It's already surpassed the Paradise, California fire, which was, I think, 83. So it's gone way beyond that. And it's probably still, it's going to go even higher, undoubtedly. Yeah, it says with only 25% of the burn area searched. Yeah, it's going to go higher, unfortunately. Okay, so what's interesting is that this was 4 years ago, and next year will be 5 years. And toward the end of this 5 year period, we have this kind of like twin event in Lahaina, Hawaii, another city that's been almost completely burnt down, just like Paradise, California, but with now a higher death toll. So I don't know. I take both of those seriously. I wouldn't be surprised if they show another image like this next general conference, but of Lahaina. Maybe they'll mention the two chapels that survived the fire. But it's interesting timing. And then Giant Universe was talking about the eclipse, right? We have the eclipse coming up. Here's the path of totality. So this is the area that you would have to be in between these two red lines to experience the full eclipse and be in the shadow of the moon. Now, we've talked a number of times about the significance of this eclipse. If you go to other Christian channels, just like evangelical channels, especially the ones that are really focused on eschatology, which is, you know, timelines and the study of the last days and stuff like that, they're keenly aware that the 2017 and the 2024 eclipses are significant because they're about 7 years apart. So it's an interesting number. And then they talk about the fact that it makes a big X over the United States. I've already done a video. If you're about to type this, I've already done a video about the Aleph over America. If you take the 2024, the 2023, and the 2017 eclipse, and you take those paths of totality, it creates an Aleph, which is the first letter in the Hebrew alphabet. But it's not in the modern block alphabet or the modern block script. It's from the Paleo Hebrew, which was older. It seems to have preceded the block alphabet, although Jews, feel like the block alphabet is very special to them. They think that that was actually the original. And in that video that I did, we were kind of speculating that, that Paleo Hebrew, it may be the closest thing that we have to the original Adamic language, potentially. We looked at what it meant for the languages to be confused at the time of the Tower of Babel. A lot of people, I think, assume that it's like, oh, at that point, suddenly everybody was speaking a literal different language. But when we researched this on the church website, it seems like it probably has more to do with just corruption entering society, the way that they speak, the way that they talk, and just how things kind of degrade over time. And we've talked about today how in these days it's like we're losing our language, is becoming corrupt by how people try and control words and phrases and ideas, and because language is a very powerful tool. Anyway, so we have these two eclipses, right? The next one that's coming up is October 14th, and it goes over Utah. The 2024 eclipse, it will be on the 8th of April, which is the day after General Conference. So General Conference starts on the 6th, right? And we all know that April 6th is a very important day. It's Christ's birthday, his true birthday. And then the next day is the 7th, which is on a Sunday. And then the next day on the 8th is the eclipse. And we've also found some meaning in that because, again, 7 is the number that represents perfection and completion. And so 8 would be the start of a new cycle. And we've played around with the idea on this channel that 8 could be associated with the millennium, just because we're going from one cycle, one world, to a completely new one. So the eclipse happening on the 8th could be significant. Don't really know. But either way, it's very interesting that it's happening the day after General Conference. So I think that that's a very good observation, Giant Universe. I can't remember if we'd already kind of talked about that on the channel, but I don't remember ever saying that. So I think this might be the first time that we're thinking about a 5-year period starting with 2019, with April 2019. Who knows? And it may not be an exact 5 years. Just like in the Book of Mormon, it's like they didn't seem to know exactly when that 5-year period would end, from the time that Samuel the Lamanite said that it would be 5 years. So it could go longer, it could be shorter, if it is even a thing in the first place. But it's something to think about. And I feel like it all lines up pretty good. I think it really does, especially given this idea of Paradise, California, and Lahaina being about 5 years apart, and we're toward the end of that 5 years. Something to think about. So this made me realize that I should make a spreadsheet to specifically track um, signs, disasters, miracles that are LDS specific. Because in the course of doing this channel, we've come across a lot. And I don't think that I have them all right now. I'm sure that there's some that I'm forgetting. If you know of any, please send them my way, and I'll add it to this spreadsheet. Uh, Actually, before we look at that spreadsheet, let me just give you where we're at right now with the Flood the Earth challenge. I haven't updated it since the last video where I put this on, but we're at 6,253 copies of the Book of Mormon that have been shared. Okay, 635 people have joined. My subscribership is at 17,200, so it'd be awesome if um, at least like 10,000 of you joined. If you can, at least like share one, if you're struggling. If not, it's fine, or just do it anyway. Even if you don't want to be part of this challenge, share the Book of Mormon. But could you imagine if you just shared one? If 10,000 people shared one, that would shoot us up right now to 16,000. So maybe just do it, because that would be amazing. All right, let's go to the spreadsheet that I just put together. So this is a timeline. I'm roughly, kind of keeping it in the same format. I haven't created a reference column yet because I was rushing to do this video. I want to get this out at a certain time, or have it be done by a certain time because I have something to do in a little bit. So I'll do that later. But all the references can be found on the main timeline. Where is it? This one right here, the Second Coming timeline. It's under the tab Timeline Second Coming. And this is kind of like my master timeline with just like everything. So you can find the references here if you'd like, or just wait till I do it on this one. So as you can see, since 2017, there have been a lot of LDS specific signs, in my opinion. Okay. But it actually goes before 2017. I'd like to go, just all the way back to anything that's like really anything to do with the church, going back to the beginning of this dispensation. So the first one that I have on here is 1873. I don't know if you caught this video. I think some people maybe thought it was a boring video, or it sounded boring, so they didn't watch it. But it turns out that this banyan tree, let's see, banyan tree news. I don't know. Let's do this one. Okay, so in Lahaina, there's this kind of like landmark, this special location, the banyan tree, which is a type of fig tree. It survived. It is damaged. Some of it has been burnt, but it is still alive. As to whether it'll survive or not is yet to be seen, but it seems like they think that they'll be able to save it if they hurry and give it water and stuff like that, but it is currently still alive. So this, along with the 2 chapels and a lighthouse, and then there are a few other structures that have been saved. This is among the things that survived the fire. And it turns out that it was planted here the same year that David O. McKay was born. I find that significant because David O. McKay had a special relationship with Hawaii because he's the one that had the vision to create the BYU Hawaii University there, as well as the Polynesian Cultural Center. So I feel like there's some kind of special relation here. It's too coincidental that the same year that he is born, you have this landmark, you have this important tree that was planted the same year. It's very odd. So I take that as a sign. I take it to mean, just like the 2 churches surviving, that, you know, this whole thing that happened is like the second coming. It's like a microcosm of the world. And the things that are going to survive are the things that are not worldly. The things that, you know, are related to the gospel or goodness. We know that there's going to be all the people that are terrestrial that aren't necessarily members of the church, but only the good, the upright, are going to continue on, whether inside or outside of the church, but especially, those in the church that are living upright. So you have the 2 chapels, and then you have the banyan tree, which is, fig trees are a symbol of Israel. And then on top of that, this tree was planted the same year that one of our prophets was born. So I feel like that there's that meaning there in this. Okay. So going forward in time, one that I wasn't able to get on here before starting this video, but I will add later, is the Independence Visitor Center, the one that was built to be part of the 24 Temple Complex. When it was dedicated, it was a very stormy day, but the storms let up so that they could have the dedication. You can find that in the Ensign. Whenever I put it on here, we'll go over that story again. I've already gone over it like maybe once or twice. Okay, August 11th, 1999. We had the downtown Salt Lake City tornado. And it actually, I should put here, well, I don't know how to word it, but basically it went onto Temple Square, or at least kind of like nicked it, and it touched the temple as well. I have to go through all the details of that again, but essentially this was a very rare occurrence. You don't typically have tornadoes along the Wasatch Front, right? But especially like in downtown Salt Lake City. As far as I know, this is the first time there was a tornado in downtown Salt Lake City. It was very rare. I was shocked when I heard about it. I know I've told this story a number of times now, but I was in high school at the time. School had not started yet, but I was doing football practice. And at that point, we were doing 2-a-day football practice. And I was in the locker room, and someone said, "Oh, there was a tornado downtown." And that blew me away, no pun intended, because I'd always grown up hearing that, that Salt Lake is a place that's relatively safe from tornadoes because of the mountains. So for this to happen in Salt Lake City, which is like right up against the mountain in the northern part of the valley, it was very odd. And you have to keep in mind that this is just a few months before the millennium started. Okay, because this was, toward the end of 1999. So very, very strange. Okay. December 17th, 2010. I'm sure some of you, maybe most of you, have heard this. Let me know if you have or haven't heard of this story before. Put it in the comments, yes or no. To the Provo Tabernacle fire. So the Provo Tabernacle was destroyed by a fire. Okay, I have a picture. Now, when you see this, you may now recognize this as the Provo City Center Temple because it was a tabernacle before. By the way, I've done a video about different church tabernacles because there was a time when they had these structures that were larger than just your typical meeting house that were called tabernacles. And they, there were different functions that took place, like I don't know, things like probably like they'd be stake centers. So you'd have like stake conference there, and if a general authority came by, they'd probably speak at the tabernacle. There's not like a lot of them, but there was this one in Provo, the Provo Tabernacle. So it burned down, right? They decided to renovate it and turn it into a temple because it is a really pretty building. But something miraculous happened inside the tabernacle. There was uh, the Harry Anderson. Is that his name? I have to see. Harry Anderson, second coming. Yeah, Harry Anderson. He's the one that painted this amazing painting of the second coming that we all know and love. And it's at this point pretty iconic. You see it a lot of different places in the church and sometimes outside of the church. Sometimes other people use this image for their YouTube. Like people that are not members of the church, they use this picture for their YouTube videos and stuff like that. So this painting of the second coming was in the Provo Tabernacle, and it was burnt all except for, and here's a better image of it, all except for the portion that has Christ. Okay. Uh, so here you have another event that involves fire. It burns down the tabernacle. It even burns the painting itself. But the part that has Christ, it does not burn. You can't tell me that there's not a message in that. Okay, so I guess they preserved it. I don't know where it's at now, but obviously there were people that realized that that was very odd, very strange, miraculous even. And so that happened in 2010. Interesting year for that to happen just because it's a even number. A lot of times we think in tens or hundreds or thousands, right? So 2010, it's interesting. This was also, just a little while before Christmas because it was on the 17th of December. So it's a time of year that we have Christ on the mind. But just so odd. So odd. And another little bit about this is that so I just put this on my second coming timeline. I didn't have it on here until now. But it turns out as I was adding it, I realized that's the same day that the Arab Spring began. The Arab Spring was a series of revolutions and protests across multiple Arab in Muslim countries. Okay, we've talked about that as we've talked about color revolutions and how it seems like to me that that whole thing wasn't organic and is in fact part of a larger war that's being waged right now between world powers. And some of you agree, some of you don't agree. It's fine. But I tend to think that we are in a sort of World War III. I'm not going to go over the reasons why here because I've done it a few times. Just do a search on my channel for World War III or color revolutions or whatever. But the Arab Spring to me seems to be connected to the year 2001 and what happened there, and even all the way up to what's happening right now in Ukraine and Russia and Iran, how they've recently had what I think was a attempted color revolution that seems to have failed so far. So anyway, it happened on a very interesting day when this really big event took place. All right, so let's move on. I'll put the links for this in the description below in case you want to reference this again. Whenever I bring this story up, there's usually people that want to have a copy of the picture or be able to like save this somewhere because it's just it's so incredible. Okay, now in 2017, on August 21st, and 21 is an interesting number because that's 3 times 7. It's 3 sevens. Again, 7 meaning perfection, completion. That's when we had the first eclipse that is in what seems to be this series of 3 eclipses. And it's already interesting because of, what the other Christians realize. This is part of 2 eclipses that make a X over America. You know what? I forgot to bring this up. Let's see. Paleo Hebrew. People have talked about how. Let's see. Hold on. Hebrew Tav. Boy, I wish that Tav. Whatever. Anyway, let me just pull this up. They've pointed out how all 3 eclipses together make this Aleph symbol from Paleo Hebrew, which is essentially the same as Phoenician, but it's also called Paleo Hebrew because they used it too, the Israelites, it would seem. So you have the Aleph, and then you have the Tav, which is an X, right? So it's like Alpha and Omega, or Aleph and Tav. So anyway, the thing with okay, so the thing with the 2017 eclipse that we're talking about right now is that it went over the Kansas City area, and this is where Independence, Missouri is. It doesn't show it on this map, but let me make it bigger. It doesn't show it on this map, but Independence, Missouri is right here. The path of totality went over Independence, Missouri, the future center place, the future what you would think of as an actual city of New Jerusalem. So it went over Independence here in the south, and then up here in the north, you have Adam-ondi-Ahman. Dang, I wish I had a more detailed map, but I've already done this exercise before, so just search eclipse on my channel and you can find the video where we talked about this. So as you can see, if Adam-ondi-Ahman is up here and Independence is down here, this path had to be this path. It had to be this direction, and it couldn't vary by more than just a few miles. Otherwise, both sites would not have been included in the path of totality. So, to my mind, this is very LDS specific. These are really important sites, right? Christ is going to be in the New Jerusalem. It will be one of the future world capitals. It's going to be Old Jerusalem and New Jerusalem. Those will be the 2 capitals. And then Adam-ondi-Ahman, obviously, whenever that happens, or if it already has happened, or at least part of it has happened, that's another place that Christ shows up. And it's a significant area. That's where Adam and Eve dwelt when they were cast out of the Garden of Eden, which has been identified to be down here in the Kansas City area. Garden of Eden, where Adam and Eve dwelt. Okay, so it had to be that. So that to me is what makes that eclipse even more special than just the 7 years apart, Aleph and Tav, X over America, all the different ways that you can think about the eclipses. All right, in that same year, this made a lot of news within the YouTube and Second Coming community, both inside and outside of the church. The whole thing with the Revelation 12 sign, which essentially there are people that interpreted this as a sign because it seems to correspond with what's said in the 12th chapter of the book of Revelation, where it talks about a virgin giving, or sorry, not a virgin, a woman giving birth to a child. And we all know that the woman represents the church, the child represents the kingdom of God, meaning the political kingdom of God. Um, but how the woman had to flee because the dragon was there ready to destroy it, which references the great apostasy. So when the woman comes back out of the wilderness, that's the last days. That's the time in which we're in right now. Uh, Doctrine and Covenants uses a lot of that kind of language. The church coming out of obscurity or out of the wilderness, which harkens back to Revelation 12. But what you had is you had some Christian groups that were looking at the constellation of Virgo. And at that time, the sun would have been at Virgo's shoulder. So it's like she's clothed with the sun. This is from language in Revelation 12. And then the moon was at her feet, um, like the actual moon at the feet of Virgo, if you're making a picture in the sky. And then the crown of 12 stars. There were some planets that were there that made it so that she had 12 stars over her head. So, and then there was Jupiter. Jupiter had gone into her womb area, and then because of retrograde, it exited. But it was after 9 months, which is the gestation period for a human uh, baby. And so a lot of people saw a lot of significance in this, and I think that I do too. I think that I do in the sense that it reminds us that the church is back and that we're probably toward the end. You know, the church came back with Joseph Smith. And the Gospel Lessons channel, he talked about how this same sign appeared at the time that Joseph Smith received the plates. So I feel like those are probably two twin events. They're like bookends, essentially. And the way that I think about it is that, well, this is the period of time between here and here. This is the main period of time in which this work is going to take place. And so now you're at the end, but we're not going to give you a specific end date because you're not supposed to know when the second coming happens exactly, like the day or the hour, but you will know if you watch the signs. So here's a sign, it's almost time. That's how I view it. Anyway, so the day that this happened, um, based on what I've seen, it happened at the same time as the women's session of General Conference. And that was back in the days when it was like during a different month or like a couple weeks before General Conference. So it happened on that day. I have to like go back and research this though because I'm not sure exactly what determined that that was the specific day. When I first put this on my timeline, I wasn't really doing references, so I'm going to have to go back and see who came up with that date, but I'm just going to assume for now that it's right. Okay, the 18th of March, 2020, that's when the angel Moroni dropped his trumpet. The angel Moroni on top of the Salt Lake Temple. Very significant because the Salt Lake Temple is the flagship temple of the church. This was the result of an earthquake in Magna, which is in the western part of the valley. And he dropped his trumpet. And there's an obvious symbol there. The symbol is that an angel who's blowing a trumpet to warn the world and to herald in the second coming. He's no longer warning the world. He dropped his trumpet. That's probably not a good sign because the sign would be time's up. People pointed out that him without his trumpet, it looked like he's looking at a watch. Let's look it up. I've done this so many times on this channel, but it is worth worth reviewing every now and again. So look, it looks like he's looking at his watch. You may find that silly, but if that message is what comes through when you look at this, then there's a chance that it's intentional. It doesn't have to make sense to the world. It doesn't have to make sense to the intellectuals. It doesn't have to make sense to science. The Lord doesn't have to work through those things to send a message. And he usually works through small and simple means. So if there's a certain number of people that feel like that's what's happening, then it may just be that that's what the Lord is communicating, on top of, the idea that he dropped his trumpet and he's no longer blowing his trumpet. So this happened, I think, just like a week after BYU students decided to go protest at church headquarters, um, pushing the LGBTQ stuff that they wanted to push for BYU, because that's what you do. You go to the prophet and then you protest with picket signs. That's how the church works. So that happened. And then 2 days later, that's when the missionaries were called home. And then 2 days after that, all the temples worldwide closed. By the way, it was also the 77th day of the year, which is interesting. Okay, on September 2nd of 2021, there was this tornado, another tornado, this time in North Salt Lake, which is a different city from Salt Lake City. It's North Salt Lake City, but it's just right there north of Salt Lake. And it happened 2 days after Elder Dean Davies from North Salt Lake passed away. So this general authority that lived in North Salt Lake passed away, and 2 days later, there was a tornado. Very weird. Very, very weird. 2021 Utah tornado. In case you want to come to this story, I'll put it in the description below. Elder Dean Davies, I guess, had a lot to do with temples, like the construction of temples, as well as the renovation of the Salt Lake Temple and Temple Square and the church office building, plaza, that area. So I don't know. He kind of stood out with his involvement in those things. And then you had this tornado that happened 2 days after he died. It's very weird. Don't know what to make of it. 2022, we just covered this in a recent video. We had the Tonga volcano and the tsunami that ensued. And on the island of Artza in Tonga, all the buildings were destroyed except for the church building. And remember, Tonga, when it comes to percentages, by percentage, it's the most LDS nation in the world, with like 63% of its population being members of the church. So, and again, I'm not going to do it again, but when we did the David O. McKay video, we talked about this, and I went over a few different quotes talking about the fact that church leaders have said that the Polynesians, including Hawaiians, Tongans, New Zealanders, like the Maori and stuff, that they're descended from Nephi through Hagoth in the Book of Mormon. So essentially, you have this very Nephite country that had this happen, and the church building was all that survived on this island, the island of Artza. Okay, later, the 13th of August, 2022, which is the mirror date of when the angel Moroni dropped his trumpet, which was March 18th. So, dang it. Look at these 2 dates right here. March 18th, angel Moroni. August 13th, meteor over, basically over Salt Lake. And the boom, because it exploded, the boom from the meteor was heard all the way from southern Idaho down to Provo, Utah, which is a very large area. So you have these kind of like mirror dates if you're just looking at the day and the month, 318, 813. And you also have this weird thing where an angel goes quiet, no longer blowing the trumpet. Missionaries come home. And then August of 2022, by that point, we had the April 2022 General Conference, in which the big focus was calling for missionaries to go on missions. And so it's like a boom. It's like, okay, the pandemic's over. We need to get back with it, and maybe even more than that, we need the transition team potentially that'll go into the millennium. Who knows? But it seems like these two events, in my mind, are connected. Later that year, on the 9th of September, President Nelson turned 98. But what was interesting is that he became the oldest apostle or prophet of this dispensation. If you're going by years and not going by like weeks or months, because technically he became the oldest living prophet and apostle before this. But if you're going by years, that's when he became the longest living prophet or apostle. And it came just one day after Queen Elizabeth II passed away. And she was the longest reigning British monarch in British history. And out of all sovereigns, out of all royalty throughout the whole world, she was the second longest living monarch behind King Louis. What was it? King Louis the 14th of France. So there to me seems like there's a message there that just like Lahaina, where God's people, God's things that have to do with the Lord will survive, whereas the worldly things will pass away. So I feel like you saw that again right here with these birthdays. And by the way, I don't have it here, but we've gone over that long list of other world leaders, dignitaries, uh, that were the longest living of their type that passed away all within months of each other. And part of that list was Queen Elizabeth, Mikhail Gorbachev, which was he was the longest living Soviet um, whatever leader. The one from China, Pope Benedict. Even though he had emeritus status because he had stepped down, he was the longest living pope of all time, the longest living nun of all time. And again, when we're talking about the Catholic Church, we're talking about 2,000 years, roughly. Well, like less than 2,000 years, really, but a long time. And they die within just a few weeks of each other, the Pope and the nun. The last Greek king, right? You had all these like really important countries and organizations, and they're all passing away, and President Nelson is moving on past them in age. I'm telling you, the message here is that the Lord, his people, they will make it, they will abide the day. They will abide the day of the second coming. Okay, and now we have Lahaina that was destroyed, and we already talked about the church buildings that remained, as well as the Banyan Tree, which seems to be connected with David O. McKay and his special relationship with Hawaii and how it was planted the same year that he was born. Okay. And then we've talked about these other eclipses, but let's go into the details really quick. So you have the path of totality of this eclipse in October on the 14th. That's going to pass through Utah. Let's see, where is that one? Right here. Blow this up. So this is the upcoming eclipse. It's going to be happening in October. So the time of General Conference, it's going to be, well, let's look at I got my Hebrew calendar up with the Gregorian calendar too. So the 14th, it looks like that's going to be a week. Well, more like 2 weeks after General Conference. So General Conference is going to be Sunday the 1st and then September the 30th. Because I think the way that it goes by the Sunday. So it's like the first Sunday of October. So the first Sunday in this case is the 1st. And so that's why the Saturday sessions would be on the 30th. So this eclipse comes 2 weeks after General Conference, you could say. It comes basically just a week after the Feast of Tabernacles. Interestingly, the Feast of Tabernacles will line up with General Conference this year. The first day is going to be on Saturday, and then the second day of the Feast of Tabernacles is going to be on Sunday, right? So, but anyway, after the Feast of Tabernacles, a week after, you're going to have the eclipse on the 14th, which is going to be on a Saturday, which for the Jews is the Sabbath. And this eclipse is going to go through Utah. Now, it's not going to go over Salt Lake City or even Provo or Ogden or St. George or anything. So none of like the more prominent cities. But it is going to go through. It's basically going to cut the state in half. Okay. We've talked about the possible meaning of that, you know, um, thinking about wheat and tares, for example. In fact, you could say that maybe this kind of cuts it in thirds a little bit. If you just did like a straight line right here, it's like this might be kind of a third of the state, and then the other 2/3 are up here. I'm just like eyeballing it. I don't know. But that could allude to the idea that out of three groups, telestial, terrestrial, celestial, one group will not be moving into the second coming. And what's interesting, actually, now that I think about it, if we were to look at it that way, you would say that sorry, St. George, you would say that this group over here on the south side of the path of totality would be on the side that's closer to Las Vegas, right? In Los Angeles and Hollywood and stuff like that, places that aren't really not normally recognized for their righteousness. Um, that's actually really interesting. Just thought about that right now. I've always been kind of puzzled ever since I knew that this eclipse was going to happen as to why it wouldn't go over Salt Lake, for example. Why wouldn't it go like just clean, like really cleanly halfway through the state? And maybe that's why, because it's more like a third. I don't know. Some of you are like, well, how do you even know it means anything in the first place? Oh, that's a good point. I guess I don't know. But if it does mean something, and if it means what I was just saying, that's really interesting. The south side, the portion that would be like the telestial, is on the side of Las Vegas and Los Angeles. And then the other 2/3 would be on the Salt Lake City side. You could even like take it further and say it's on the New Jerusalem side because of Kansas City over here. Um, and then, like we've pointed out before, it's going to go over Corpus Christi, which that means body of Christ. So that makes me think about Christ and his resurrection and how we're going to see with our own eyes, our natural eyes, the resurrected Christ when he comes. So that's really neat. Okay, and then let's go back. And then, all right, to top it off, we have another upcoming event, uh, the 2024 eclipse, which is happening again on April 8th, the day after General Conference. And with that eclipse, it goes over the Sacred Grove and the Kirtland Temple. These are places where Christ has appeared, and the Sacred Grove is a place where God the Father himself has appeared. That's pretty amazing. So when you look at these three eclipses and how they seem to like really include things that have to do just with our church, I don't think that I don't think that we can ignore that. I don't think that we can ignore that. And again, this last eclipse is in 2024. That's 5 years after President Nelson said time is running out. Let's go to that eclipse right now. Right here. Here it is. See? It goes over the Sacred Grove up here in other church sites, and then it goes over Kirtland, which is over here somewhere. I know it's in the Cleveland. Oh, here it is, Kirtland. Right there, Kirtland. I am saying Kirtland. Okay. In the last video, people are like, oh, the church is going to buy Costco, Kirkland brand. I was saying Kirtland. I spelled it Kirtland in the thumbnail. I know it's Kirtland. It may just sound the way that I speak like Kirkland. Kirtland, okay? It's just the way that I talk. Do I need to like pronounce it from here on out? Kirtland. There's Kirtland right there. If that makes you happy, that's what I'll do. So it's going to be going over Kirtland, Ohio as well. And as far as I know, I can't think of any other significant places that relate specifically to the church. I can't think of any other places that it's going to go over. But, oh, there's Killeen. That's where I used to live. Not in Killeen, but in Fort Hood, which again, now it's called Fort Cavazos because we have to erase history. But I used to live over here, Fort Hood. This was a good time in my life. I loved it. Oh, and over here there's Temple. There's Temple, Texas. That's interesting. So yeah, it's just, I don't know. I feel like this is a pretty good collection of things, and I don't think that this is all that there is. So that's why, I'll probably need your help. If you know of anything else that should be on this spreadsheet, please let me know. Ideally, send me an email. In even more ideally, if you have like a source, so I can put references in this column. It's going to be column E. Yeah, send them my way. I'm going to add like I said, I'm going to add the dedication of the Independence Visitor Center. But it kills me because I'm sure that there's probably something else on my timeline, but that I missed. But the thing is that my timeline is it's so long at this point. I have so many things. There's so much on here. But anyway. Okay, well that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. Like this video if you liked it. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.